Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Terry from Bakersfield PD in California. He has 29 years in Bakersfield and 35 years total in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Terry. Thank you so much for being here today.
Morning, Paige. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've heard of your agency and a lot of the great things that you guys are doing in wellness just through being in this space. And then, in talking to you offline, it's really apparent how passionate you are about wellness and leadership. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with our listeners today. For those who don't know who you are, can you give us a little bit of background?
Sure. I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana, which is kind of south central Louisiana. If you think of Louisiana and you know it's sort of shaped like a boot, Lafayette is really in that sort of ankle area, kind of halfway between New Orleans and Houston. It's originally where I'm from, and I actually began my policing career there in 1990. As I think and reflect back on that, it's hard to believe that it's been that much time. But I didn't come from a law enforcement family. I had really nobody in my family that was involved in this sort of work at all. In fact, my father was a Baptist preacher.
Mhm.
And so I did not come from that. And so, but from an early age, there was nothing else that I had planned to do, had thought about. I wanted to be in policing. I wanted to be a police officer, and my mind was made up. And I don't know why. And much to the chagrin and hesitancy of my mom as I was starting in my career early on, she's like, "Why are you doing this? And where's this coming from?" And I said, "I have no idea," but it just appealed to me so strongly. And so, but I also joked with her because there's a picture of me hanging in my mom's house. It's in mine now. I'm 2 years old, and it's a little baby picture, but on my chest is a star. And I told her, like, a little Western outfit. And I told her, I go, "Well, it's your fault because you planted that day, and it has stuck with me ever since." And so, yeah, I'm really fortunate too. I feel blessed that I didn't have to go search. I didn't wonder. And I think there's a lot of um, uh, security that comes with that. I always knew what I wanted to do. So I started my career there in Lafayette in 1990 and kind of went through the ranks, a traditional law enforcement path. I got married about 3 years after I started, 4 years. I got married in 1994, and my wife is from Bakersfield.
Mm.
And so over the next couple of years, she started talking about wanting to go home. And I was a detective at the time, assigned to robbery homicide. And so I was getting close to that 7 year mark. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go and transition, I really need to go now. And so we made the move in 1997, moved here to Bakersfield and been here ever since. I came here and started over. I went through the academy again, not a pleasant experience.
Mm.
Being an officer for 7 years. And so I was really challenged. And we talked a lot about, okay, how am I going to behave even starting all over and sit there like you don't know a thing and just keep your mouth shut, your head down. And that's really what I did. But it was an interesting experience for me to do that. But since I've been in Bakersfield, just really went again, sort of a traditional law enforcement route, went through the different ranks, worked in a variety of divisions and departments here at the police department, and up through was appointed an assistant chief in 2017, and was there for just almost 3 years. Right at the end of 2019, the chief at the time retired, and so I was appointed interim chief in December of 19, and then April of 2020 was appointed chief, and we all know what the world was like
Yeah.
then and how different it is today. And so there were a lot of things that have sort of influenced the direction that I've tried to take the department in terms of wellness and really all of those kinds of things and sort of that compressed pressure and stuff really shaped who I am as a leader and really had some influential moments. And here we are today talking about what we've done and what we're trying to do here because it's a journey, and I think that's one of the things that I've learned is you can't become a wellness organization. It is not a destination that you arrive at. It's a journey, and that we're learning it, and you're having to work it every single day. It's hard.
Yeah. Wow, there's a few things that I want to point out because I didn't know a lot of that stuff that you just shared. You were, talking about going back to the academy and then becoming chief in 2020. Like, those are difficult
Yeah.
challenges to overcome. And, I know that you said you didn't know why you wanted to be in law enforcement, but you just always knew. Do you think that over the years that you have developed a why? And has that why changed throughout your career? Does it look different today than it did maybe when you first started?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know of a specific why or a point in time. All I know is that sort of that innate, it met a need that I had. Whether that was working outside. I do like that. I like the independence. I like the fact. I like the sort of the feedback and the results of accomplishing things. I certainly have enjoyed the impact that we've made along the way in different lives, because, and that's what one of the things I talk about every day, and maybe this is going to answer some of that question of the conversations that I have with staff every day is reminding them that you don't know how much of an effect you have on somebody when you walk away from a contact, no matter what it is. Sometimes you get that immediate feedback because they're angry about the decision that you made, or they're angry because you couldn't do exactly what they wanted. Um, but very often, or you see it's a very touching and emotional thing, and they release and they express things and all of those kinds of things. But more often than not, the conversation ends, the contact ends, you walk away, you go on to the next one because your mind is moving on. That person's left with that contact, and you never know what you said, how you said it, all of those kinds of things that have an effect on people. Because the truth is, not everyone speaks to an officer during the course of their lifetime. Very few
Yeah.
actually have that personal contact. And so I always try to remind people to take advantage of that. And so as I think about the why, think about, okay, for me, has that changed? Do I reflect on that? It's those kinds of things I think that kind of feed me every day in some way, that reaffirm, that give me purpose, that remind me of both the good that I do during the day and the days that I don't, that I'm challenged or I fail. Um, I'm reminded by those opportunities. And I think that's kind of what feeds me. And sort of that purpose is that it is fulfilling. And I am reminded daily in different ways about why I'm here and what I'm doing. And I think that's that affirmation that I see, that I get, that feedback that I get every day.
I'm so happy you said that because I can relate to you a lot in the sense that, I think that we all, no matter what career you have, I think we all want to feel like we made a positive impact on the
Yeah.
world, or on other people's lives. And you're exactly right. You may never know the impact that you're having, but the pursuit of that impact is worth all of the challenges that come with it. And I had something happen yesterday. It was yesterday or the day before yesterday. I never know what day it is anymore, but it was this week. And it was one of those reminders. I had someone on my podcast. He was a chief of police. And he reached out to me via email and he said, "Our conversation inspired me to take better care of myself, and I've lost 25 pounds." And I
Wow.
was like, wow, it's those things where I didn't go out, having a conversation with him thinking I'm going to impact this person's life today and he's going to want to take care of himself. And then that wasn't the intent. The intent was, to have these open conversations about wellness, but it impacted his life in a positive way that inspired him to start prioritizing his wellness. And it's the pursuit of doing good that is worth all of the hard work, all of the stress, all of the, valleys that come with it, because there are going to be hard times. And sometimes it feels like there's more hard times than there are good times. And so, what you said before that I really liked is we have to remind ourselves of the reason why we're doing these things. And we have to remember those moments where you were reminded that you did make an impact to keep you going. And one of the things that you said to me offline that really stuck with me is that you have to be committed to the work because it's hard and it's uncomfortable. And it's
It
this
is.
idea of commitment. And so I would love if you talked a little bit about, your thought process on that, because I was really on board with one, the commitment aspect of it, regardless of, the peaks and the valleys, but then also, being able to withstand uncomfortability.
Yeah, I think some of us, depending on your personality, naturally, sort of that you naturally gravitate toward people. You want to be engaged. You want to be involved. Um, and then there are others that are really much more internal and reflective. And I just want to come, do my thing, and do good. But that's what's meaningful to me, and I want to help wherever I can. So there's all kinds of different approaches, and people have different personalities. But when you start talking about wellness, regardless of where you are in sort of your own personality and your traits and the things that you would naturally gravitate toward, when you step into leadership in particular, you're stepping forward and you're accepting some responsibility that requires you to get involved, that requires you to get uncomfortable, because it deals with very personal, difficult events and personal experiences that people have, that impact the organization, that impact people's lives within the organization. And you've got to be okay with being uncomfortable and getting close to people and having deeply personal conversations to learn, to not to be nosy and get into people's business, but to send the message that you're there, that you don't want to be intrusive. And so that's what comes to my mind when we start talking about wellness and sort of that purpose, culture that you're trying to develop can be uncomfortable for leaders because you are getting personal with people. You are dealing with people's families and their own marital failures or parenting failures or health struggles or performance issues. Because very often there's lots of data and lots of science behind what creates, or when you start looking at performance issues for our officers, for staff, when you start diving into some of those, it is difficult because you're having hard conversations with people. You're trying to learn, not trying to criticize or to be critical or discipline, even. You're trying to learn what's going on, what has happened. Your performance is not what it needs to be, it's not what it's been. Open up and look. I mean, all of those things are really hard to do and uncomfortable. And it's easy to step back and go, I don't know what's going on, but this is not acceptable. We've got to address it. This is the way to address it. Send the message. And that is really the wrong strategy because you can really destroy people. And what I was going to say about the science, we do know that even that people who do struggle with performance issues, more often than not, it's the organizational stressors. It's not the trauma from the community. It's the how the organization is functioning, how the organization is treating them, the outcomes, the perceptions of unfairness, or not understanding where we're going, or not understanding why decisions are being made. That I think that is one of the lessons I've learned along the way over the last several years, particularly as leaders in leadership, is recognizing how much that influences
Mm.
performance and those kinds of stressors. And one of the answers to that is wellness, is that sense of that we want you to be okay. We do care about you. Yes, we have high standards. Yes, we have high expectations, but we also deeply care and want this to be a place for you to grow, to heal, to mature, to find meaningful work. All of those kinds of things are inclusive in the wellness conversation. It's not a program. It's not a destination. It changes really what the organization does every single day because we're all humans and we all have interactions and our lives are going in a lot of different ways. We're nearly 700 staff members here in total. And so I assure you, we see a wide variety of wellness kind of issues. where people are having real life happen to them. Sometimes it's affecting performance, sometimes it's not, but you got to be willing to get uncomfortable and to dive into that space, step into that gap, and let people know you truly do care. But it takes a long time to build that trust, and we're still working to do that.
Yeah. I had a conversation one time with an officer, and they were kind of in the wellness space within their agency. And we had built a relationship, over time. And they came up to me and they said, and they were talking about the culture and the organizational stress that that particular department was going through at that time. And she goes, Paige, I, she's like, I've seen everything out on the streets. And she kind of gave some examples, some like gory, examples. She's like, none of that compares to the stress and how bad I feel right now with what's going on organizationally. And it was
Yeah.
the first time because I've had these conversations where like I can understand it, like in my mind when you talk about this, but to have someone come up to me nearly in tears, like you could see it on their face, and they were just like, nothing on the street compares to like what's going on right now and how that's impacting my wellness. It was that like that moment, that light bulb that I was like, "Oh wow. It's true."
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. And I appreciate you talking about uncomfortability and almost and I want to kind of phrase this in two sides of the coin. So hopefully this makes sense and you can let me know how you feel about this. But the way you're talking about it with leadership, you talk about it as if it's your responsibility to be uncomfortable. That these are your people. And if you care about them, then you're willing to cross that line of uncomfortability for the greater good to make sure that, they're taken care of. I would also, like to view this from the other side of the coin, as an individual how can we also receive that support and that help? Because that can also be uncomfortable. I've had
Mhm.
plenty of times in my life where I've been going through stuff and there are symptoms of those things. And you talked about that. You start to see behavioral issues or whatever that is. Those are symptoms of a deeper issue that's going on. And I think, at least from my experience, I would shove it down. I didn't want to talk about it. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Let's keep moving. And when people would come to help me or to ask me if I was okay, I was immediately defensive. I didn't want the help. It was kind of like walls up. And I think that as the person who is on the other side of things, it's a reminder that if people are looking out for you, if people are asking you those uncomfortable questions, they're becoming uncomfortable because they care about you. And so, are you also willing to be uncomfortable to receive the help and support that they're offering you? And I think it's a
Yeah.
partnership. And it's not easy. It's not easy to kind of cross that line. But someone told me one time that if someone reaches out to you and asks you if you're okay or offers support, it's an act of love. And I really liked that because I think it
Mhm.
brings the walls down. If you can view that, and especially if the approach is correct, right? If someone's coming at you from that space,
Yeah.
looking at it as an act of love and being willing to also be uncomfortable so that you can thrive, because that's the goal, right? The goal is that everyone gets to the end of their career and the end of their lives feeling as good as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean, man, you made so many great points there. Going back to sort of how, as you started, I do view it sort of the wellness as an element of my responsibility as the leader, as the chief here. And so, as we had these different events occur within the department and over time, and certainly COVID and George Floyd and all of those things over the last several years, one of the things that really influenced me, that has had a significant influence on me, was a book that I read by Bob Chapman. It's called Everybody Matters. And Bob is very eloquent in how he talks about his view of his business and his that they don't they're like a large manufacturing firm that they don't build things. As people started to ask him about his business, he started talking about the people
Mm,
and and who they were, because he said he views it very much as a stewardship responsibility. He says, as a leader here, and he says it much more eloquently than I, but says that he really views him as being in charge of the precious lives that are a gift that walk into his building every day, that the families send them out into his organization, expecting them to be cared for, to be trained, to be equipped, to have some flexibility when life happens, and all of those things. That if that's really what your focus is, then you can address all of the needs that a person has in a well-rounded way. And we know that wellness directly affects behavior. It
Mhm.
directly affects performance. And so if you're really after, and you have good corporate goals or good police agency goals and initiatives, if you're going to achieve those on the public safety side, you've got to have healthy people. You've got to have people that are willing to go out and do that job, but they've got to be healthy to be able to do that. And so some of what you were also talking was reminding me of yes, the comfort, yes, all of those things, but it's trust.
Mhm.
The organization has got to perform in such a way that people are willing to open the door. Like, I have to trust that your motives are right. I have to trust that you're genuinely interested in what's going on, that this isn't some back door to punish me or to get me to confess something or to get me. I mean, all of those kinds of things really go into someone's mind when they're struggling. And so, one of the things that we talk often about and have really tried to be intentional about is that consistency, is that you can trust when we ask, how are you doing? What do you need? Or I have to address a performance issue. Uh, I'm not seeing what I've seen from you. You have so much potential. Something's changed. How can I help? What's going on? You can't just walk in one day and do that. And the organization's got to perform in such a way that that message gets sent, that those experiences that our staff have are just that, because that spreads quickly. Early on, we had some challenges where we had some people struggling with some mental health issues. And it wasn't that long ago when our default response was, all right, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it. This is sort of the organization's take, right? I don't know what's going on. We can't have you out there working. It's an exposure of liability. We don't want you to get hurt. Certainly don't want you to hurt anybody else. We're sorry that you're struggling. Give me your gun. Give me your badge. Go away, kind of, and we're going to get some help for you and get well and then come back. Well, people would disappear. People would go into this abyss of sort of off duty, didn't have much connection with them. And very, very few of those people actually got healthy, got restored, and were able to come back to work. And so, as we began having the wellness conversation in our organization, we said one of the things we've got to do is we've got to do it differently. People have to trust the process. If we're going to break the stigma, if we're going to get people to take the walls down, they've got to trust that what we're saying is true and that their experience affirms that. And so
Mhm.
we had some people come forward and we had some people go, I'm not okay. Great. That Thank you for coming forward. We're sorry that you're going through this. We're with you. We're going to figure this out. We don't have all the answers, but you're not going to be alone in this. And so we did have some people that surrendered their equipment. We had others that we were able to intervene in a different way, get a different resource. They went home with their gun and badge. They were stayed connected to a doctor. We didn't strip them of their identity. We didn't the organization didn't take an action to send the message that you're broken and you need to go away now. We got close, and for a leader, I would tell you, it was uncomfortable when I was getting briefings on some of these, going, okay, what? I'm sorry that this person is going through this, but okay, how are we approaching this? The organization still has a responsibility for safety of the public, for the safety of the person. But give me some confidence here and some assuredness that this is going to be okay, that we have the right safety net in place. And so that was one of the early things that we tried to do in order to build into the scenario that you laid out, where people are willing to be welcome. They're willing to open the door. They're willing to be vulnerable. They're willing to take the wall down because they know they've seen others go off and come back. And we have a couple of guys that are giving testimonies around the department, and they've done it in others where they've shared their story of being broken and going off, and sort of that separation from the department, but that the department stayed connected, and they got better and they came back full duty, and now they're. I mean, we've had some real success stories, and so that was intentional, and I'm grateful that those people are well and are back now. But it was that when I talk about uncomfortableness, we kind of made it in the context of that personal connection, and that can be. But as a leader, you got to commit to this, and
Mm.
again, you feel exposed, you feel vulnerable from a liability standard, from a perspective, from sort of that public safety, public security perspective, because that is what our responsibility is for. But but you can do it, and there are resources available. You've got to develop them, but you've got to be willing to do that, because that is a powerful message that is sent to your staff. When we all say it often, it's okay to not be okay. We want you to come forward. Yeah, but what happens when I do?
Yeah.
It means I'm going to go off. It means I'm going to get separated. It means I'm going to be stripped of everything, of some of my identity. It means I'm not going to be able to come back and do my job. No, thank you. I'll find a different way. But when the organization, and hey, you have people that have different experiences, and they can go off and get healed and come back. And it doesn't have to be that dramatic. It can just be many, many other things. But when the people's experience, when our staff's experience is the department does care, it did work, it was confidential, it was anonymous, it was, all of those things are critical for a success of a wellness program. And we've had some of those successes, and I'm so proud of our people and the way that they've been able to walk down this road, all of us together. But it's been challenging, and it's not been perfect. But like I said, when you think about leadership and you think about wellness and you start looking at it from the perspective of stewardship, it leads you down a completely different road, and it helps you. It gives you the strength to make some of the decisions that are scary often, because you know why you're doing it, and you are being responsible, and you are putting necessary things in place. But that stewardship, it is a responsibility, to care for our people, and that's really shaped me as we've gone through this over the last several years.
Thank you. You know, some of the things that I was thinking as you were talking was this idea of action over words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I loved
Yeah,
what you said, that the experiences have to be affirmed, right? So I think that there, I shouldn't, I want to see how I want to word this. A lot of times we talk about things, right? There's a lot of lip service that happens. And
mm-hmm.
so for you to say, yes, we want to convey this message that we're here for you, that we're going to get the help that you need, but the actionary piece has to be there. It can't just be talk, because it takes, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but it takes so much time to build trust. And it doesn't even have to be within an organization. This could be with a friend or a partner. You know, it takes a long time to build trust, and it's very quick to break that trust. And so how can you continue? Like you said, it's an ever evolving long-term goal to continuously support people and prove that what you're saying is true. And I think of wellness because you said broken a few times, and I really think of wellness like, do you know that old Japanese art form where ceramics that break, they'll put it together with gold and they make it into this new, stronger piece of ceramic? I kind of think of wellness like that. You know, we're going to have little chips. We're going to have little cracks. There's going to be things that happen to us. And sometimes we feel like we completely shatter. You know, there's no one that's going to get to the end of this life completely whole. You know, we're always going to have little bumps and bruises and cracks. And we can put ourselves back together again. There are resources that can make us even stronger than we were before. And this art form in Japan is really renowned because people see it as being even more beautiful. Like you're even more
Yeah.
beautiful with all the cracks and the things that you have going on. But you have to be willing to take those steps to make yourself um, whole again in the best way that you can. You might not be exactly how you were before, something happened, but you can learn from it, you can grow from it, and you can come out stronger and maybe even a little bit more beautiful than you were before. And so I think of it like this because I think sometimes when we are going through things with wellness, it feels really hopeless. And you're kind of, sometimes at your bottom where you're like, man, I don't know how I can keep going. I don't know what life is going to look like, or I don't even know what to do or how to put one foot in front of the other. But to your point, if you have people, and I think it's so powerful for anyone who's listening who has gone through it, who has taken advantage of resources, and who has come back stronger to share those things.
Mhm.
I feel like it's my obligation to share the things that I've been through, the messy parts, the hard parts, the things that have helped me, because there are people out there right now that don't know that there is a way to be whole again, a way to feel good again. And there are ways and there are resources. And so, I try to kind of relate it to that because I do think that, as long as we keep having these conversations, then it's going to spread awareness and education and hope for other people who are struggling.
Yeah, wait, again, you have a lot there. And so one of the things about experience and about trust, one of the foundational elements is relationships. Before you can ever get to a place of trust, you've got to have a relationship, whether that's one-on-one, whether that's with a peer, a coworker, or an agency with a community. You've got to build a relationship, and then trust develops from that. But in order to be in a relationship, you got to have some proximity. You got to have engagement. You've got to have some sort of connection. And so, one of the ways that we've also tried to build trust, not just on the experience side, was to develop is to acquire enough resources and to develop our program that we are engaged, that we are in places to build the relationship. And our spouses and families are actively involved and an integral part of our wellness program. And many of the events that we have are centered around the family, not just the employee. We have spouse special spouse events. We have couple events. We have retirees, because that's another thing that we can't lose sight of is our retirees. We have events for them every year as well, so that they feel included. And all of our families, retirees, and certainly current members are have access to all of the range of wellness services that we have available. So that's been a part of our strategy too, is to have us connected enough consistently where we can build relationships, so that when there is some need, that we can demonstrate that consistency and demonstrate and give that experience to the people that we say we're going to give. And I think that, again, that's part of the leadership responsibility, is kind of keeping track of that. I meet every other week with our wellness coordinator and the captain that he works for, and we talk about what's coming up the next month, what kind of events are we have, what's the scope of it, where are the needs. So I think that's a really important part of the trust building, is you've got to be connected, and you've got to have relationships that enable trust to be developed. And then you spoke to it in sort of the art example, but it is resiliency too, and being able to show that people can go off and come back stronger and productive and pick up where they left off and not be reassigned. And all of those things are really important in the life of a police officer, that affect their self-esteem and their image and all of those kinds of things. And so we really tried to, again, it's not perfect, and you got to have a constant conversation about it. But those are some of the things we're trying to pay attention to, so that people can trust the system. They can trust that it's okay to not be okay. We mean it when we say that. And when you come forward, your experience affirms it. you can go off. You do have access to resources. Your families can grow because, I mean, think about it. If you're 22, 23, 25, going into people's homes, trying to teach them how to fix their marriage, raise their kids. I think about that as my own experiences. Like I had no business telling people that, but that's what our job is. And so, and then as you get older, I mean, all of those kinds of things shape you. And then you have your own kids, and you're still going into people's homes, and you're still telling them how to fix. I've used it at times, and I know it happens every day. You've got problems at home within your own marriage or your own kids. You're going in other people's homes. It seems very clear to you, and you're telling them exactly what you're trying to do at home. And then when you go home, you're in that same mode. You're telling, do this, don't do that, fix this, we're not going to do that. And, crossing that bridge every day is difficult. And so we've tried to, again, make sure that our wellness program is comprehensive enough, that we've got connections, we've got touch points where we're building relationships so that people do feel whole, they do feel fulfilled. And as in most of the conversation here, in the context of wellness, we've talking about the struggles and the trauma and the brokenness and that sort of thing. But the flip side of that is we're doing it because life can be great and fulfilling, and those things don't have to happen. And again, that's sort of that stewardship mindset of let's not let people get there.
Yeah.
Let's have access. Let's pay attention. Let's get some washouts, we call them, debriefs. Let's be proactive. Let's make people do some of these things. Let's reach out and make sure their families are connected so that the families don't come to the department for services. They can if they'd like to. We have them available, but they can go directly to the service provider, so that we don't get there, so that people can live fulfilled and meaningful lives, because that can be as much of the reality of policing as the trauma and the other flip side of that wellness coin.
Thank you for that reminder. Because you're exactly right. And I think that when we talk about wellness, you don't have to be broken or at rock bottom to be proactive and to take care of
Sure.
yourself. You can do it because it makes you feel good. You don't have to
Yes.
be going through a crisis to take care of
Right.
yourself and be proactive. So thank you for that. I do want to dive a little bit into kind of the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of some things that you guys are doing. I'm going to structure this as kind of a three-tiered approach. And so let me know
Okay.
if I need to repeat it, but I want to kind of know the why, the what, the how. There are a lot of agencies out there that are still infancy stages. They kind of don't know what to do, how to get started. So, what I would really appreciate if you're willing is one, explain kind of what got you here. What were some of the maybe events or things that happened that kind of catapulted you guys into this wellness conversation in space? What are some of the things that you've implemented that you've found success? And how did you do that? Especially with budget and buy-in and all the conversations that we have. So, why did you start focusing on this? What are you doing that's successful? And how did you do it?
So yeah, what immediately comes to mind is sort of that personal journey, but also the organizational journey. And go back 8, 9 years now, 2016, 2017, 2018, in a kind of a 3-year period, organizationally perspective speaking now. In about a 3-year period, we had like 12 officer involved shootings. We had 2 line of duty deaths. We had about 72 homicides in our city across that span. We were also on the verge of beginning to grow and starting to hire a lot. And so we started having more of those conversations. Didn't really know what we were talking about, but we were talking about, man, there's so much pressure. There's so many things going on. And then leading in to COVID and George Floyd and all of those kinds of things. So a lot of those events in a compressed period of time really started an organizational conversation about wellness and about, okay, what does this mean? How do we keep people working, and how do we prevent these tragedies from occurring? Because even though we had a couple of line of duty deaths, we also had a couple of suicides of some retirees. And so all of those things were really brought the conversation as we were a relatively new leadership group in command staff, and we had a new chief at the time, and so we just kind of started talking about it. And again, there's no structure, no direction really. It's just like, okay, what does all this mean? And as the years went by and we went into COVID and went into all these other things, we started talking about it much more intensely because it became so much more real. At the same time, for me, I was being impacted by it personally and started as I was moving. I was an assistant chief and responsible for different divisions. And so it started my own personal reflection of, okay, what does this mean? I know we're having these experiences. How do we get people to be willing to come forward before there's an emergency, before there's a crisis? What kinds of things do we have in place? The budgets are tight. I don't know how to do this. We just really started talking about it a lot. So that is what sort of started the organizational journey and conversation, and my own as well, as I really started developing my perspective that leadership in sort of in this area and many others is a stewardship role. And with that comes all these different kinds of responsibilities. And so I was exploring it on my own personally. Um, but then we also one of the significant conversations that prompted us to was a good a place of moving forward was we had a conversation with our risk manager for the city. Risk management is a separate division within the city, but they have access to tremendous amounts of resources. They have access to all and daily have conversations with all the insurers and the coverage and the liability and all of those kinds of things within the city. And so we really started tell us more about how the department is performing in some of these areas. Here are some of the areas that we see some areas of concern and we don't really know how to address it. One of the first places that we started getting some resources was from our risk manager. She goes, well, I have this resource. I have this. I can give some money for this kind of service. And so we connected with a service provider. It was just the first one. They came in, told us kind of what their services were. We're like, man, that sounds great, but is anybody going to use it? And how do we make sure that it's an appropriate service and all of those kinds of conversations? We also brought human resources in. And those two divisions, those two departments within the city came alongside us and really helped filter the many of the things that we were thinking and talking about, helping us find some resources that were not within the police department's budget, but they had access to them and could begin to do that. And so those were really from an agency perspective, two critical decisions that we made was not trying to figure it out ourselves, starting small, but being committed to it, and then finding people that were like-minded, that had the same interest, that had skin in the game of sorts, and were really outside the police department. Risk management and human resources were really two important early partners. One of the early things we also did was we did a survey within the organization. Didn't really know how to ask a lot of these questions, but what kinds of things would you like access to? What kinds of sources would you use? What kinds of resources would your family like? And as you can imagine, the feedback was small, was in percentage. People didn't engage a lot in it. But one of the things that they did tell us was, we want something off-site, and we want it there consistently. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, okay, again, that began to shape what this looks like for us, because this is kind of what we were learning, what some of our people were wanting. And so we just started small with one service provider. What we learned from them, we started reaching out. Okay, where are there other resources? How can we connect to other people that are doing well? There are so many organizations across the state and across the country that are really doing things well and have been doing them a long time. So we said, who is that? Let's start finding out who is doing it well. How do we just start? And again, we were starting small. We didn't have a budget. We had no wellness budget. We had no money for that in particular. And so we just started small, reaching out to people who are doing it well, got outside the department into other city resources and started learning what was really out there. And then as services began to be utilized, we really worked with those providers to learn what our people were using them for. Again, it was anonymous, it was confidential, all of those things. But what are the issues? And it identified organizational stressors, not the outside, not the regular policing work. There was a lot of organizational stressors. People felt and had different experiences, whether that was promotions, whether that was not understanding decision being made, their own personal performance or discipline kind of things, and how long IAs were taking, and how long people would be off after a critical incident. All of those things began to surface as we began asking, what are you looking for, and what would be meaningful to you? And so we sat back and just really tried to digest. Yeah, I don't know how we do all of this, but our people began to speak, and that's how it began to inform. Okay, now how do we do this? Where do we go? So we went and learned from some other organizations, but then we also made a commitment to be uncomfortable and to learn from a leadership how you do this. Okay, when somebody calls or we get word that somebody's not doing okay, they need some help maybe. Let's get the services to them. Let's get the help to them. But we need somebody that there's some continuity within the organization. We need somebody that can be sort of those lead people, those connections that people would have. It can't be leadership directly. And so we sort of had a peer support team, but it wasn't anything what it is today. But we began establishing that and trying to identify people that are sort of spread across the organization, both sworn staff and professional staff. Today we have about 28 peer support members, and they are spread across the organization. And so there were people that people had confidence in. They had good reputations. They were people that people knew, respected, all of those kinds of things. And we started having conversations with them about, if a peer support member has somebody come to them, who do they call? I mean, we really got that granular about how we make this work, because as leadership, we're going to go out and we're going to tell our organization, we do care, we are here, there are resources available, you can access them, but we've got to make sure that it works for them. And so we really got granular in that. That led ultimately to dedicating a wellness coordinator who could be that continuity, who could be that manager of all of these different kinds of activities. And so that has proved to be very good for us to be able to do that. Today we have an off-site wellness center that he works at. That's his office. It's accessible to our staff 24 hours a day. It's got a quiet room. It's got a room where you can have a counseling session, a washout session, a debrief, or whatever. It's got a sort of a break room setting where we've got recliners, and you can come in and take your vest and gun belts off, and there's food available, healthy food. We've connected with some of our local ag producers within the Central Valley here in California. We have a lot of ag, and so we have people bringing vegetables and juices and everything. They stock it, and so people can come into this every day. They can just a variety of have a massage chair there, and so the very first year that it was open, it was accessed. The site was accessed 15,000 times because we have
Wow.
key cards. So we're tracking people coming in and out. So we started small, just having a conversation, reached out outside ourselves to figure out what resources are available, even within the city, learned a little bit more, went to organizations that are really doing it well, learned a little bit more, got a service provider that was, that actually risk management and human resources funded, because they have interest in, because when you think holistically, big picture, it reduces liability, it reduces cost, it does all of those things. So that's where they were focused on. They said, we'll find the first 5,000, the first 10,000 to have a contract to do this. And then we had events, and then we worked through some of these experiences. Then we had a dedicated wellness coordinator, and now we have the off-site wellness site, and we have 3 satellite sites now. One is sort of because the city here is about 160 square miles, so we're a large geographically. Our people are spread out, so they started telling us, I work in these areas and these zones. I can't go to the wellness center. Can you have something in my area? And so we got one for our detective division, which is in a different place from headquarters. They have their own wellness. We just opened one with a church out in the south part of town that they had some open space. We connected with them through one of our chaplains, and they have a dedicated space. Officers have access 24 hours a day, and it is amazing that the way the church people have wrapped themselves around the officers. There's food there constantly. The ladies are making cookies and all this kinds of stuff, but you can hold briefings there. Again, no cost to us at all. We're partnering with our DA's office to do something similar in the courthouse. And so that's having the dedicated wellness coordinator has enabled us now. He's full-time accessible to our staff, but he's also out in the community engaging. And you will be surprised that most cities truly love their police and fire. They really do. We are very fortunate to work in a community that is very supportive, but there are many others. And if you can have somebody get out there, start building relationships, you will be amazed at how your community will embrace this. And you will find opportunities. You will find partners. We have hotel owners that have offered space for people to have a night if they need to get away, to sort of have a night away from home. But they're also engaged in supporting the wellness center as well financially. So it's an amazing thing. But a lot of it has been proximity, being able to have somebody dedicated out there and engaging in the community. That's difficult for some agencies to do. I know because if you're really small, you're stretched thin. We all are. You're stretched thin. There really isn't anybody else to do that. So again, from the lessons learned from our perspective is start small, have the conversation, have some idea of what it is that you're trying to do, a very small goal, and commit to doing that well. That will build the trust within the organization. People's experiences will be that. And as you can get some of those successes, you're going to develop partners because people in your community, other city departments are going to come alongside you and try to figure out, okay, how did you do that? And tell me about this. And you're going to see results. Our healthcare locally, we're engaged with the hospitals. They host events for us, for our families. We have resources. One of the main supporters for us is Shielding the Front Line, is what it's called. Shielding the Front Line. It's here in Kern County, and it is free resources that are available to staff and their families. And that's made available through some fundraisers that they hold. We certainly participate with them as well. We're also connected with the Mighty Oaks. Mighty Oaks is a foundation, I think, outside of Texas, but they have various. I think they have a place here in California. We just became a certified outpost for them. But there are a number of resources and organizations and foundations across the country that have resources available that are willing to come step into that gap with you. And if you've got people that need some help, they're gonna be there for you. You've just got to reach out a little bit. And so again, as I think about our journey, that's where it started. It started very small. We applied for grants. We got a federal grant that funded us for a little bit. We have some money in our budget every year now. And I don't know that it will always be there, but we've got and built an infrastructure now that we are seeing the results from it. And so just start small so you can be consistent, so that you can build the experience and the trust within the organization. And then as you begin talking about those successes as leadership, you talk out and you go out into the community and start talking about this, people are going to want to be a part of it, and they're going to support you. They're going to come alongside. They just need to know how and what you need.
Thank you. It's honestly really inspiring. And I hope that through this conversation, you can see how far you guys have come because it sounds like it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah,
And
cheers.
I'm a really big fan of the tactical nuts and bolts of like how do you do it? And so I really appreciate you saying some of those really unique things and some of the things that you said, of partnering with local churches, partnering with local businesses, or ag. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening to the podcast that maybe never thought of that and are like, oh, we can start there. That's something we can do, regardless of the size of our organization. So I really do appreciate you sharing that. We talked a lot about wellness, obviously. We also talked a lot about leadership and, the younger men and women who are doing this career today are the future leaders.
Mm.
And so my final question for you is, what words of advice would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Well, that's a hard question, because it's not an easy and a direct answer. Um, but let me think here. So, was the form of your question for leaders, or for young, like young developing leaders, or for people just coming into the business, into the profession?
I think it could go
What
either
were you looking
way.
for?
Yeah, I think either way, just people who are earlier in their career, the younger generation, words of wisdom from someone who's been in the career a long time.
Okay, a couple of things. I would say learn to develop the habit of gratitude.
Mm.
There are so many things that, I mean, we're talking here the week of Thanksgiving, and I'm not sure when this is going to air, but it's certainly on our mind this week. But beyond that, um, even from a mental health wellness, you start looking into and reading into the details of that. If you develop an attitude of gratitude, it changes your brain, it changes your perspective. And I think it is one of the things that can inoculate you to the various traumas that you have to face every single day. There are incredible traumas that our police officers and even professional staff are dealing with every day as a result of their work. And finding those moments and finding those ways to express some gratitude, both internally and outwardly, because it is contagious. But have an attitude of gratitude, and finding ways to be intentional about finding things to be thankful for, to appreciate you, to be appreciative of. I think those are things that can really inoculate you to the other stressors, the other traumas that are going to come. Because if we feel and really truly believe and recognize the ways that we are blessed, the ways that the things that we do have to be thankful for, it changes our perspective every day, and it doesn't give room. It doesn't give room over time for the negativity, for the despair, for all of those things to make a home, because you're being intentional about that. So, finding ways to develop that attitude and be appreciative, and express gratitude, I think is really, really important. And then curiosity.
Mm.
Be curious. There's something exciting about learning. We're all excited as we go to the academy, as we're getting off FTO, as we're going out for the first time. And we're excited about all of that because there's so much we have to experience. And we believe that. And we're looking forward to that. And there's a certain curiosity there. Don't lose that. Stay curious. Open yourself up to learn and have new experiences, and look for ways to do things different, to do things better, to be open to other kinds of ideas. Don't shut down. And so I think those two things that come to my mind: making room for gratitude and making that a priority every day, and then being curious and being open and not losing that sense of adventure, and looking for that next thing, that next way, that next thing that's fulfilling, that you can accomplish. I think both of those things can inoculate you to the stressors, to the storms that you're going to go through every day. So those two things are things that most immediately come to mind.
I love that answer. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your wisdom, sharing all the things that you're doing organizationally. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
Of course.